over now to Mr. Ristic, who works in residential conveyancing. Your first question is, what is involved in a property search? And what if somebody wants to do this themselves? I think I should probably add there that you can't really necessarily choose to do it yourself as such. Perhaps that means that they just choose not to do a search.
Very good question raised by it, but I wouldn't disagree with you. I would not agree with you there, Leanne. You can absolutely go and do your own searches. Anyone can commission an official or a personal search, but for a bit of background quickly, all resi and commercial transactions of any purchase generally involve some form of searches for basic things: drainage and water, local authority search to see if, for example, it's a listed building in a conservation area where other rules and regulations could apply, plans for the local area, also environmental considerations like, is it built on contaminated land? And any of those could impact on the value of the property, its mortgageability and its saleability, or more importantly, if you're a purchaser, whether you want to proceed with the purchase at all if you find something nasty that turns up with it. But people can commission their own, but the risk of it is very simple. If you're buying with cash, and Leanne raised a very good question there, yes, you can probably get indemnities for protecting a mortgage lender or a buyer for no searches, but that will only cover the local authority search with any adverse entries and drainage and water. Things like environmental planning and stuff like that, you'd have to do your own research. And if you had a mortgage lender, very simply, they won't accept anything that isn't either insurance backed or an official search from one of those providers. So it all boils down to the risk you take and what you want to insure against. And usually what's good for a mortgage lender is usually good for a buyer as well. Those rules are very good and tend to protect all parties in the transaction. But more importantly, if you're buying something, surely I would like to think you would want to know all about that property. It's not just about the bricks and mortar, it's about the rights, what's going on around, what it's built on, and what bit of its previous history is. And when you don't know that, and then all of a sudden you want to deal with the property, like sell it again or flip it or develop it, we act for a lot of developers as well, the last thing they want to hear about is a contaminated land entry because you never bothered getting the searches beforehand. You could almost devalue the land immediately. For the cost of a searches, £200 to £300, maybe £500 to £600 for commercial searches. But more importantly, the expertise of the legal department to interpret those results rather than you trying to guess what the answers should be or not be. That's where the value lies: your time, your money, and your costs. So, always recommended to get a lawyer to check over searches properly, mainly because they've got the experience to analyse the results that come through.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point. You know, the cost of the searches versus the cost of the asset that you're acquiring, and what it could cost you if you miss something in buying a property.
Absolutely.
You know, it just feels like an absolute no-brainer. Why on earth would you save?
Absolutely, yeah. And the cost of an indemnity policy is not much less than actually getting a full suite of searches. Yes, you can get an indemnity policy by click of a button, but the reality is it only protects against an adverse entry. If that adverse entry is onerous, for example, it's been built on contaminated land, and I've had a few of those in my conveyancing experience, you watch the transaction just collapse immediately. You'd rather know before you spend your own money. Absolutely, Leanne. Cost is trivial compared to the value of the property as a rule.